Hey guys, I'm Dustin.
And I'm Mike, and this is ManaHoarders. In this video, we're going to be discussing some of the new legendaries that are coming out in Theros Beyond Death, the newest set coming out in January. We are really excited to go over some of these new gods and creatures for you guys. So I was actually a really big fan of the first set, as I was really interested in Greek mythology. So this one, I'm really excited that they're getting back to Theros, and I was really a big fan of some of the gods, especially a certain mono red god in particular for Commander. And I think we've only been playing Commander for a little less than a year, so a lot of new legendaries. I think about 27 in total in this set, so a lot of cool stuff to kind of build around. I'm really excited.
And the first thing we're going to talk about is some of the new gods, starting with Atrus. He is a 4 and a white and a black. He has indestructible like all the gods do, and as long as your devotion to white and black is less than 7, Atrus isn't a creature, like all the multicolored gods. At the beginning of your end step, put a coin counter on another target creature. Whenever a creature with a coin counter on it dies or is put into exile, return that card to the battlefield under your control. So, like, enter the battlefield, death rattle god right here.
Okay, pretty cool.
Yeah, like he would be really good with Mangara of Corondor. He can tap himself, exile Mangara of Corondor, and target permanent. So like he exiles himself. If it has a coin counter on it, it just comes back.
You get control of it.
Yeah,
nice.
There's a bunch of cards like that. There's Ashen Rider. When Ashen Rider enters the battlefield or dies, exile target permanent. You can exile other people's lands and stuff.
Oh no!
And get them back. Like it's crazy.
That's fantastic. Okay, so you can essentially wipe out someone's mana base with your commander. That's a very interesting strategy.
Well, with the other, I mean, Ashen Rider and like Angel of Despair has a very similar effect. You're gonna want to ramp up with that. So like a card like Burnished Heart that sacrifices itself to get like 2 lands onto the battlefield, and it can come back like with Atrus' effect. Like I love it. It's awesome.
Fantastic. Next up, we have a mono red god, the new Perfer, Bronze Blooded. For 4 and a red, you get a 7/6 legendary enchantment creature that is a god. He is indestructible, as are all the gods. As long as your devotion to red is less than 5, he isn't a creature. Other creatures you control have haste, and his new ability is one that I am very keen on, one I told Dustin about as soon as I saw him. For 2 and a red, you may put a red creature card or an artifact creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. God. So specifically with this card, you're going to want to run creatures that have really good end of the battlefield triggers, or that trigger when they attack. Now, the first one that came to mind was Atali Primal Storm. Whenever it attacks, you'll exile the top card of each player's library, and you may cast any number of non-land cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. We have played against this card a number of times. In particular, some of his decks have stolen this card and just won the game in 1 or 2 turns, because you're effectively taking someone's, commander generally, you're stealing the top card of the library, and it just so happens that he would steal the cards that gave him an additional combat phase, so he'd steal another card. Frankly, if you can get Atali off 1 time, it'll probably put you in a pretty good position, because...
Well, but there's been times when Atali, like, I don't steal him every time, and that card is really annoying to deal with.
Yes, very.
Like, you gotta have Homeward Path in every single deck you make.
Absolutely. He is a force to be reckoned with. And the fact that Perfer is going to give him haste, so you're getting a 6/6 who normally costs 6 out for 3, and giving it haste so it can attack as soon as it hits the battlefield. If someone doesn't have a counter available, he's stealing the top card of everyone's deck, and then you can cast them without paying their mana cost. Absolutely fantastic.
And that's just one of the creatures Perfer can cheese in, huh?
Right. Another one I was looking at is Crater Helian for 6. It's another 6/6. Whenever it enters the battlefield, deals 4 damage to each other creature. So you're effectively getting a 6/6 that can board wipe smaller creatures and then attack, since it's going to have haste when it enters the battlefield. So you can come in, wipe out the board of all smaller creatures, and then smack someone in the face for 6. All for 3 mana. Now, granted, you are going to have to exile at the end of turn, but if you can get enough momentum going, it's going to be really hard to stop this commander. Also making her triumphant return is Vasa, Deep Dwelling. For 3 and a blue, you get a 5/6 legendary enchantment creature, another god, the blue god, who is indestructible. As long as your devotion is less than 5, Vasa isn't a creature. Now, her ability is pretty cool. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to one other target creature you control, then return that creature to the battlefield under your control. And you can also pay 3 and a blue and tap another target creature. So you get slight control out of this, I suppose. You can take away some of your opponent's key creatures. But that ability, being able to exile your creature and then return them to the battlefield, is quite powerful. We've seen a lot of other commanders with this ability who have been quite formidable.
The Flicker God.
Yeah, I know one that comes to mind is King Brago the Eternal, has a very similar effect as this. One card I really thought of when I saw this commander was Agent of Treachery. For 5 and 2 blue, came out in M20. When it enters the battlefield, gain control of target permanent. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 3 or more permanents you don't control, or you control but don't own, draw 3 cards. So essentially, Vasa is going to help you flicker Agent of Treachery. Every time it enters the battlefield, you're going to gain control of another permanent, and he's going to help you draw cards if you control 3 permanents you don't own.
Oh, very nice.
So a fantastic way to start picking away some of your opponent's key pieces and controlling the board with this commander.
Alright, so the next god is Helia the Sun Crowned. He is cast for a 2 and a white. He is indestructible. As long as your devotion to white is less than 5, Heliod isn't a creature. Okay, so whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature or enchantment you control. That's his first ability, and then his second ability is to pay 1 and a white, and another target creature gains lifelink until the end of the turn, which is really interesting. So you make your creatures more powerful by just gaining life. That's a great ability for white to have, I think.
Yeah, I think the just inherent weakness of mono white lately has really made this card stand out because it is so powerful. And I like the fact that you don't have to necessarily run tons of creatures that have lifelink, because he can just give any of your creatures lifelink.
Yeah.
So it puts a lot fewer constraints on the way you can build around this commander. You can just run tons of mono white good stuff, and it's like, oh, but they don't have lifelink. Well, now for 1 and a white they do. And then when you're gaining that life, when they attack, you're getting +1/+1 counters. You're getting even stronger. He's getting out of hand very quickly.
And there's creatures and enchantments that help with that too, like Archangel of Thune. It's got flying lifelink. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control.
Oh my god.
Yeah, much like Heliod. You can see how it compounds. There's an enchantment called Cradle of Vitality. It for 3 and a white. Whenever you gain life, you may pay 1 and a white. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature for each 1 life you gained.
Fantastic.
Like, you see how out of hand this is getting. And I personally, I don't like infinite combos, but I think this should be mentioned too. Walking Ballista.
Oh yeah.
For 2 X's, enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. Put a you can remove a +1/+1 counter from Walking Ballista. It deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So if you get Heliod's ability to make him get lifelink, and then remove a +1/+1 counter, ping somebody, it gets a +1/+1 counter,
and that's game.
It's game over if you don't have like a counter for that.
So a lot of potential in this mono white commander. I think one that has been getting a lot of discussion since it has been spoiled. So really excited to see how people build around this in the future. In the mono black god, Cerebus Blackhearted. For 3 and a black, you can get a 5/6 legendary enchantment creature, a god who's indestructible. As long as your devotion to black is less than 5, he isn't a creature. Whenever another creature you control dies, you may pay 2 life. If you do, draw a card. And he is a sack outlet for 1 and a black. Sacrifice another creature. Target creature gets -2/-1 until end of turn. Now, I'm not too blown away. Yeah. I don't play a whole lot of mono black. I don't run a lot of black in my commander decks. Not that I'm against it, because black is arguably maybe one of those powerful colors. I'd say it would be, just for the fact that it can do so much. Yeah. But I do like that his ability, whenever a creature you control dies, you can pay 2 and draw a card. But he also gives you the sack outlet. You don't have to look somewhere else, like an Ashnod's Altar, some sort of Skull Clamp combo to get this card to do what it needs to do. You are going to want to, in my opinion, run a lot of tokens. You don't want to start taking out your key pieces just to potentially draw a card. So I would say...
Yeah, I mean, unless you're running like a zombie deck.
Right. I was about to suggest that lots of zombie tokens. One that we've played against, lots of rat tokens. Especially in mono black, you can make tons of rats for relatively low mana that could make this commander work in your favor.
But in most other black decks, the old Erebos where you can draw a card whenever you want, like, it's
hard to compare.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not too blown away, but I would be happy to be proven wrong if someone can build around this commander pretty effectively.
Okay, so the next god is the green god, Nylia the Keen-Eyed. Costs 3 and a green. Indestructible, as long as your devotion to green is less than 5. Nylia isn't a creature. Okay, so creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. That's awesome right there.
There's no downside to that. Absolutely no downside.
You pay 2 and a green, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, put it in your hand. Otherwise, you may put it into your graveyard. I see this as a staple in like a whole lot of green decks.
So even, let's say, just as an enchantment, your creatures are costing 1 less.
It's just...
Yeah, they're costing 1 less to cast, and you can, I mean, you'd say filter your draws, because if you're digging for a creature, you pay 3, you flip the top card. Oh, yeah, you reveal the top card. If it's a creature, you put it in your hand. If not, I don't really need that card. It goes in your graveyard. So you're filtering your draws and getting cheaper creatures for a 4-mana enchantment that could potentially become a 5/6 indestructible creature. Tons of value here.
Yeah.
I think any green deck would be happy to run this, and any deck that has green would be happy to run this.
Yeah, it's super good.
Another god is the red-green god, one that I was kind of taken aback by at first when I first saw it. Klothys, God of Destiny. For 1, a red and a green, you get a 4/5 indestructible god. As long as your devotion to red and green is less than 7, Klothys isn't a creature. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a land, add a red or a green. Otherwise, you gain 2 life, and Klothys deals 2 damage to each opponent. So, a little bit out there for a Gruul commander. Generally, this sort of direct graveyard hate. I like how it doesn't have to necessarily be your graveyard you're targeting. So, one card I was thinking of for this. Obviously, we want to put lands in graveyards so we can ramp, and then non-land cards will help us deal damage to our opponent, help us gain life. So Wake of Destruction, it'll let you destroy target land and all lands with the same name as that land. So obviously don't blow up any red or green lands, but if an opponent is running blue or black, 2 very popular colors in Commander, or white, blow up a plains, goodbye all plains. You have cards to exile from their graveyard and help you ramp. So there are ways to use this. And another few cards that are going to be beneficial are cards that whenever damage is dealt to opponents, you're going to be dealing more damage. And other cards that just kind of hurt them from playing the game. So Mana Barbs, when they're tapping mana, they're dealing damage to themselves. Rurik Thar, whenever they play non-creature spells, they're taking 6. So there are a few ways to build around this commander. I'm not the biggest fan, but again, there's probably a lot of untapped potential I'm just not realizing. It's just a little out there for red and green, something I'm not used to, but I do give a lot of credit for Wizards for trying something out of the norm. It is refreshing to see something like this.
Yeah. Like you said, a little weird. I didn't know what to think of it at first, but the graveyard hate, maybe add a Strionic Resonator so you can exile 2 at a time.
Right.
But yeah.
I'd be excited to see what some players can build around this. Now we're going to take a look at some of the legendary creatures from this set. The first up is Illyrios Enraptured. For 2 and a blue, you get a 2/3 legendary human. Illyrios Enraptured enters the battlefield tapped. He does not untap during your untap step if you control a reflection. When he enters the battlefield, create a 3/2 blue reflection creature token. Now, if you know from Greek mythology, there was a person who was so enraptured by their reflection that they just became obsessed with it. And it's interesting because the reflection is a reflection of his power and toughness. Instead of a 2/3, you're getting a 3/2. Really, with this commander, I think he would pair well with the new Thassa God, because you can exile him, enter the battlefield, and just keep generating these 3/2 reflection tokens. So you can have a small army of 3/2s at your disposal. Quite another interesting legendary. I like the lore around it. I like how they did use some Greek mythology to build around this creature. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'd really be running it as a solo, as a mono blue commander, maybe as some support. Tokens are nice in mono blue, so.
Yeah, and there's other better enter the battlefield effects out there, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just getting a 3/2, and as long as that 3/2's out there, you can't even use. I don't know.
He won't untap.
For 3 mana, it's all right.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're just gonna want to generate a lot of these 3/2s, that's just from looking at it. That's what I'm gonna try and capitalize upon, is trying to get most of these 3/2s out of him as I possibly can. Next up, we have a mono red legendary Anax hardened in the forge. I'm sorry. For 1 and 2 red, you get a star and a 3. He is one of the new subtype Demigod. He is a legendary enchantment creature. His power is equal to your devotion to red. When Anax or another non-token creature you control dies, create a 1/1 red satyr creature token with this creature can't block. If the creature had power 4 or greater, the one that died, create 2 of the tokens instead.
So probably want to use this in like a satyr commander deck.
Yeah, satyrs, they are trying to make satyrs a thing in this set, which I'm actually fairly happy. It's not one of the tribes I was hoping for that they'd beef up. Honestly, it was one I wasn't even thinking of at all.
Yeah.
So it's nice that they're giving some support to some rather smaller tribes. We don't see that often. I like the fact that you can get some 1/1 tokens whenever a creature dies, and possibly 2 tokens. I don't think it's going to hold up quite as well against the Krankos of the world, just for the speed that they can pump out tokens.
Yeah.
But the fact that he could potentially get pumped up and swing in for commander damage is something that's relatively nice. Having only 3 toughness, the fact that he get knocked out by a quick lightning bolt,
yeah,
is kind of upsetting. But I think he has some pretty good potential to build around. We also have Ephemia, the Cacophony. That's a mouthful. For 1 and a black, you get a 2/1 flying harpy. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile an enchantment card from your graveyard. If you do, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. So a 2/1 flyer for 2. I do like the fact that you be able to get a commander out for 2 mana. I really love commanders you can play very quickly and early in the game to start generating that value. With this, you're going to want to play a lot of very cheap enchantments, I think. And I don't know, if you have a lot of discard, just sort of waste enchantments, start generating these zombies. Again, there are going to be better commanders that can generate these 2/2 black zombie creature tokens.
Yeah, I don't think it would be so great in a commander deck, especially one where you're exiling your enchantments from your graveyard. You're kind of graveyard hating yourself, like.
Yeah, generally black wants to recur a lot of your graveyard, necessarily exile it.
You only get 1/2/2.
Yeah,
So.
You can't even run like a doubling season to double the amount of zombies. At least if you're exiling 1 enchantment to get 2/2/2 zombies, I might you might see that as a relatively good strategy. Again, maybe there's just some cards I'm unaware of to build around with this commander, but albeit not the most powerful card, but I'd be excited to see what someone can come up with this one.
Ooh, next one, a Rasta of the Endless Web.
Ooh,
it's 2 and 2 green. It's got reach, and whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/2 green spider creature token with reach.
Crazy.
I think this is great.
Fantastic.
I think this would be an awesome commander to build around, especially with doubling season, parallel lives.
Yes. Green has so many ways to make this card just go off.
Yeah.
Yeah, parallel lives, getting 2 1/2s with reach whenever someone else does something. Especially this card, I think, is a perfect answer for any blue player, because they are going to want to run a lot of instants and sorceries. Blue just wants to do that. That's what blue is known for. So you're getting lots of 1/2s. Blue also has lots of flyers, so whenever they play the game, you're getting 1/2s that can block their flyers, making it very difficult for them to come after you. A fantastic card to play around.
Yeah, green doesn't have a lot of flying cards, I don't think.
They really don't. Green is sort of the anti-flying color, which this card perfectly personifies that. Not to mention, I mean, just throughout the game, you'll have these little 1/2s that no one is really going to be paying attention to until they become a huge problem. You know, 1/1/2 isn't that big of a deal, but 5 or 6 instants and sorceries later, you've got a pretty big heap of spiders that you can have at your disposal. So really excited to see this commander. I actually be pretty interested to build around this one, and that artwork is just awesome. And then Atrus, Oracle of Half-Truths, a 3/2 human advisor with Menace. Whenever it enters the battlefield, target opponent looks at the top 3 cards of your library and separates them into a face-down pile and a face-up pile. Put 1 pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. So again, you're going to want to just have tons of ETB triggers with this one. You're going to want to bounce him back to your hand so you can cast him. He'll essentially help you draw through your deck very quickly.
Yeah. You also have access to black, so whatever
some of the best tutors in the game.
Whatever goes in your graveyard, you can just take back out, you know, with
exactly.
Effect,
so he's actually a very intriguing commander. It'll let you dig through your deck. It'll let you put cards in your graveyard if you want to do that. Then, like you said in black, or, you know, putting something in the graveyard is never the end result. You can always get those cards back. So a great way to dig for answers, play cards out of your graveyard, and really just get through more cards than your opponents can, to where they just have no way to keep up with you.
Next up, we got Caffee, beloved of the sea. It cost 1 and 2 blue. It's a legendary enchantment creature, Demigod. Caffee's power is equal to your devotion of blue. And it also has creatures and enchantments you control have spells your opponents cast that target this permanent cost 1 more to cast. So
she offers some protection for your creatures and enchantments.
Yeah, they can't be targeted. Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, hard to just extract a lot of power out of this commander. Again, I think she'd be a fantastic addition for some commanders that run lots of enchantments. One in particular that I run is Vasa. Something that's very frustrating is when you have tons of enchantments, then your opponents want to take them out. It is nice that she offers protection to your creatures as well, so she'd fit very well, I think, as a support for decks that already rely on lots of enchantments. But on her own, the fact that she just offers them an additional, 1 mana more to cast protection doesn't really put her far and away ahead of a lot of the other commanders that are established. Yeah, also, she's only in 1 color.
And if you're targeting it, so like if you really want to take something out, I mean,
it's not going to save you from an enchantment wipe or a board wipe.
Yeah, like a board wipe, but
right.
Just paying that 1 extra mana for something you really want off the field.
More than likely, players are going to do that.
Yeah.
If it's something that is that crucial to an opponent's strategy, they're going to pay the extra 1 mana to get rid of it. No question.
So it's just all right, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not too blown away by this one. Another one that I'm actually fairly excited for is a Is-It commander, Dalekos, Crafter of Wonders. For 1, a blue and a red, you get a 2/4 Merfolk Artificer. He can tap and add 2 colorless mana. Spend this mana only to cast artifact spells or activate abilities of artifacts. Equipped creatures you control have flying and haste. This reminds me tremendously of Sir Gwyn from Throne of Eldraine.
Oh yeah,
with the buffs you get from equipping creatures. The focus there was knights, but this is any creatures.
The first thing I thought when I saw this card for the first time was just equipment cards that have living weapon on them. You put it on the battlefield and it automatically summons this 0/0 germ creature and it equips it to him.
Absolutely.
So you just put that equipment out, it's already like a creature. It has flying and haste.
Wow. You know what? That's actually quite awesome. That's fantastic. That's really cool. Yeah. I think there's a lot of synergies with this card. Champion of the Flame gets +2/+2 for each artifact and enchantment equipped to it. So the fact that you're going to be equipping those anyway, and then it's going to be getting flying and haste and the additional +2/+2. And I think base, the card is a 1/1 trampler, so there's a lot to build around there. I'm never going to be mad for giving my creatures flying and haste. There's never a situation where I'll be unhappy that they have that. Plus, he can add 2 colorless mana to help you get those artifacts, get those equipments out faster.
Yeah, that's a nice touch.
He has a ton of potential.
Or activate abilities of artifacts.
Yes, absolutely. I want to run a lot of, just off the surface, I want to run a lot of cheap equipments to get out, to give my creatures that flying and haste. Again, Champion of the Flame will be able to buff himself up. This will give him flying and haste, will have some evasion, and start just hitting opponents very quickly before they can really find a way to stop this sort of strategy. And blue gives you access to a ton of counter spells, a ton of bounce abilities. I really like this commander. I'm actually quite excited to build around this myself in the future.
All right, next up we got Daxos, Blessed by the Sun. It's 2 white for a legendary enchantment creature demigod with 2 and a star. Daxos' toughness is equal to your devotion to white. Whenever another creature you control enters the battlefield or dies, you gain 1 life. So really good for a Heliod deck.
Oh yeah, look at that. It just pairs so well with the new Heliod. So if your creatures die, you're going to be gaining life. You're going to be putting 1/1 counters, and then his devotion. I like the fact that his toughness increases equal to your devotion. Obviously, he's not going to be having a ton of power to just go and crush your opponents, but this is one particular creature you're going to want to leave on the battlefield. So the fact that they're not going to be able to just throw a ton of damage at it under the right situations is beneficial. Whenever another creature you control enters the battlefield or dies, gain a life. That's fantastic. I would pay 2 white mana for that. White likes to gain life. And then with the new Heliod, white likes to put out 1/1 counters when you do that. Ton of synergies when you gain life in white. So by himself, I think he has some potential.
Yeah.
Because there's tons of ways to gain life and use it to your advantage. Aetherflux Reservoir. Get yourself up to slightly more than 50 life, pay 50 life, and then essentially just crush an opponent.
Laser somebody off the...
off the battlefield. So there's some possibility there. There's other cards you can run that whenever a creature enters the battlefield, gain a life. Soul Warden, I think, is one in mono white. It costs 1 white. Yeah, whenever a creature enters the battlefield, gain a life. Any creature. So tokens, your opponent's creatures. This will just kind of help that spiral out of control. Now, granted, this is only creatures you control, but you get in a lot of these other cards that help you gain life. Gain life whenever opponents play the game, and you can be in a very powerful position.
Okay, up next, it's Utopia, the twice favored.
Simic commander.
1 and a green and a blue. It's a legendary creature, human wizard. That's a 2/2. It has the constellation ability. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. That creature gains flying until the end of the turn.
Straight up, I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
I love Simic. Simic is so cool, but I feel Simic is just so bleh. It's like
there's other better alternatives to this card for sure.
I mean, let's just look at the card here. So whenever an enchantment, so you have to play an enchantment, and your payoff is you put a +1/+1 counter on a creature, and that creature will gain flying until end of turn.
Until the end of the turn. If it was forever, then this card would be great.
If the creature gained flying and just had flying, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome, because I feel the investment would be worth the payoff. There are simply better cards that can give you +1/+1 counters faster. And I mean, you could cast Levitation for 4, and then all your creatures have fly. And then there's other ways to get these 1/1 counters out. Mm-hmm. Not terrible. I'm just not too happy with Simic. I like to see more kind of weird, like, Simic, the evolve. The evolve ability was one that was really interesting whenever you played a creature with higher power and toughness than this creature. It gets a counter. So those would be interesting to play around.
Definitely more efficient ways to get +1/+1 counters in the Simic.
Not inherently a terrible commander, just not something I'm really blown away by, too excited for.
You don't really want to build around this.
No, I could see it being really good a support, again, like some of the other creatures we have seen so far. I mean, you could build around it, but again, there are creatures that are more powerful than this that can do what Utopia does better. So, just something to keep in mind. Next up, Good old Satyr Tribal. We have Galia of the Endless Dance. For a red and a green, you get a legendary Satyr with haste. She is a 2/2. Other Satyrs you control get +1/+1 and have haste. And whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, you may discard a card at random. If you do, draw 2 cards. I'm pleasantly surprised with this.
Yeah,
they're making a solid effort to make Satyr Tribal a thing. She is a fantastic commander for Satyr Tribal. She's going to buff them. She's going to give them haste.
It only costs a red and a green.
And you get good card draw for 1 card. Now, again, you are discarding the card at random. Yeah. But if you have a handful of junk, you discard 1 to draw 2 for a 2-mana commander. That's fantastic.
And there's a whole bunch of cards in green that allow you to get stuff out of the graveyard, so it's not too big of a deal.
Exactly. Absolutely. I think she would go very well with the red commander we looked at before that'll let you generate those satyrs to help you get out those creatures quickly. Again, red is very known for generating lots of tokens, i.e. goblins. Again, they're not satyrs, so they're not going to get that +1/+1 in haste, but if you want to start drawing some cards, there are tons of ways to get tokens on the battlefield to let you do that. So, a rather interesting commander, something that I'm pleasantly surprised to see. I'm glad to see a smaller tribe getting support, like I said.
Okay, yeah, next we have Hackdos, the Unscarred.
Achilles! Yeah. He's made his way into magic.
It costs 2 red and 2 white. It's a legendary creature, human warrior, a 6/1. Hackdos, the Unscarred, attacks each combat if able. As Hackdos enters the battlefield, choose 2, 3, or 4 at random. Hackdos has protection from each converted mana cost other than the chosen number.
Each converted mana cost is awesome. Initially looking at it, before you read the ability, it's a 6/1 for a 4. Especially 2 red and 2 blue, 2 red and 2 white is going to be, I don't want to say fairly difficult to cast, but it require a little bit more work. Mm-hmm. Initially looking at him like, oh man, this dies to a 1 mana shock. Like, this is terrible.
Yeah. But
yes, the protection from a random 2, 3, or 4 converted mana cost. I like this. It really kind of captures the feel of the Achilles they're going for.
I think it'd be a really fun commander to build around. I mean, it might not be the highest power commander you can have, but it's certainly be fun. And you have to attack each turn. It's got protection from
absolute aggro. This is saying, I'm coming after you. What are you going to do about it? And granted, it does give you the Boros colors. So white will offer some pumps. Red will give you tons of creatures. There's tons of ways to benefit this commander. I think this would be a fantastic Voltron style. You're going to want lots of enchantments that pump him up or give him protection. Say protection from 2 or 3, and you have some cards that can either make him indestructible, so it's not going to matter. Things that can just get in your opponent's face and deal tons of damage. I really like this commander. I think he'd be very fun to build around, very fun to play with. Next up is a black and red commander, Crocs, Titan of Death's Hunger, an Elder Giant. This is another new subtype we are seeing. We've seen Giants, but never Elder Giants. I think this is going to try and play upon the Titans from Greek mythology. He is a 6/6. Whenever he enters the battlefield, sacrifice him unless it escaped. Whenever he enters the battlefield or attacks, each opponent discards a card, then each opponent who didn't discard a non-land card this way loses 3 life. He can also escape for 2 black and 2 red. Exile 5 other cards from your graveyard. You may cast this card from your graveyard for its escape cost. A lot of potential here. The fact that for a black and a red, you will make each opponent discard a card and then potentially lose some life is nice. And then once he's in the graveyard, you'll pay 4, exile 5 other cards, and get a 6/6 giant. I like the fact that you get this ability every time he enters the battlefield or attacks. Now, granted, you're not going to want to have him entering the battlefield too often for the fact that if he did not escape, he's going to sacrifice himself. But again, in red, there are plenty of ways to get multiple combats, multiple attacks off. So you essentially take away your opponent's hand, you start dwindling away their life whenever they are discarding non-land cards. So there's a lot of potential here.
Yeah, and escape, it's an interesting mechanic. You obviously don't want any graveyard recursion in whatever deck this is going in. I don't know. I think it's kind of fun mechanic.
It was kind of weird, and the more I've thought about it, so say you have this card in the graveyard, you really want to get it back. You don't have to necessarily rely on getting a card that can bring it back. It can bring itself back. Now, again, at the cost of 5 cards from your graveyard, generally Black doesn't want to lose graveyard cards.
Also, how many times are you going to be able to do that? Like, the 5 cards is a little excessive. Maybe if it was like exile 2 cards or something like that. But
right. This is basically like, I really want this card out. You know, it can escape. I can escape it one time instead of having to rely on a black card. You know, get target creature card, get target card from your graveyard, put it in your hand, put it on the battlefield. It can just do it itself. So again, like you said, not something you want to do too often for the fact that you're not going to really have much graveyard if you are relying on some graveyard recursion. But that ability is fantastic. I like the ability that it can just take away your opponent's hands and there's nothing they can really do about it, and it whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, so it's quite nice. You can, you know, on turn 2, you know, start getting their hand taken away from them, maybe taking away some of their life. Turn 3 or 4, get him out, you know, if you can escape that quickly, and then you have a 6/6 that every time it attacks they're losing their hand, they're losing life. So there's a lot of potential with this commander, I think.
All right, and next up we got Cuinna. I don't know how you pronounce that.
He is the Cerebus, Cerebus of Athreos, right?
Yeah, the Hound of Athreos. It cost 1, a white and a black. It's a legendary creature hound, 3/3. It has vigilance, menace, lifelink, and creature cards in graveyards can't enter the battlefield. Players can't cast spells from the battlefield. I hate this card.
So I really like the flavor around this. So the Cerebus was the guardian of the underworld, so it keeps those lost souls from escaping. Yep. I like also how it has 3 different abilities: vigilance, menace, and lifelink. It has 3 heads. It's a 3/3. It costs 3 mana. They really hit the nail on the head with this one.
Almost all of the decks I've made have graveyard recursion or something,
and this just shuts it off.
Yeah, it just shuts it off for me.
Really appropriate. I like the fact that it has the white and black, so it's kind of guarding the black players from using a lot of their graveyard to their advantage, and white, you know, just kind of the, you know, polar opposite of black. So an interesting card. This is an interesting one to try and build around. You'd obviously want to try and get a lot of your opponent's cards in graveyards to remove them from being able to use them.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a good card. You'll definitely stop people with this card for sure.
I think the fact that it does lifelink, maybe you could use that to your advantage.
It's got vigilance, menace, and lifelink. So not only is it stopping your opponents from getting stuff out of the graveyard, but also hitting them in the face.
Yeah, it can get around. It can gain you life. You could build life gain with this card. You could try and I don't know. I feel like there's a lot you could do with this 3-headed pupper. Next up, Pulu Chronos Unchained for 2, a black and a green. You're getting a zombie Hydra. I loved the original, so I am really excited to discuss this one.
Hydra.
Pulu Chronos enters the battlefield with 6 +1/+1 counters on it. It escapes with 12 +1/+1 counters on it instead. If damage would be dealt to Pulu Chronos when it has a 1/1 counter on it, prevent that damage and remove that many +1/+1 counters from it. So kind of your atypical Hydra. Also, you can pay 1, a black and a green. It will fight another creature, and you can escape it for 4, a black and a green. Exile 6 other cards from your graveyard. Now, granted, that seems kind of steep to escape it, but when it escapes, it comes in as a 12/12 instead of a 6/6. That I feel like that's a decent payoff for exiling 6 cards, and a simple doubling season, even hardened scales, giving it an extra +1/+1 counter whenever it enters the battlefield. I feel like there's a lot you can do with this. Not to mention whenever it fights, if it has those 1/1 counters, it wouldn't necessarily die, but you're destroying your opponent's creatures. I feel like this card has a lot of potential. It can be really useful at controlling the board. I like that aspect of it. Really, the only thing you'd want to make sure is that you are replacing those 1/1 counters as it's potentially taking damage to keep it on the battlefield. This is definitely a card you want to keep on the battlefield so you can keep using those fight abilities, and in order to do that, you're going to have to give it those +1/+1 counters.
Proliferate might help.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Proliferate
Yeah.
would be fantastic. I know there are other cards that can double number of +1/+1 counters on target creature or permanent, so a lot of those would be useful with this commander.
And also, if you have Yeva, Nature's Herald, or Vivian, Champion of the Wilds, give your creatures flash. You can escape your Hydra at the end of your opponent's turn. Just have a 12/12 ready to go right there.
Just start fighting stuff and then attack them, smash them in the face.
Yeah.
I like that. That's awesome. Yeah, a lot of potential. I do also like, so the original Pulu Chronos was just a mono green, and now you have access to black, which gives you so many more synergies to work with. So, fantastic commander option from this set.
We got Renata, Called to the Hunt. It's costs 2 and 2 green. It's a legendary enchantment creature demigod with a star and 3 toughness. And Renata's power is equal to your devotion to green. And each other creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it.
Oh my.
Yeah, it's kind
Okay.
of like a Hardened Scales, but creature edition.
Yeah. Yeah, her power will get boosted up for each, forest in the converted mana cost of permanent you control. Each creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional 1 counter on it. I feel like there's a commander options that can do this better.
Yeah.
Giving 1/1 counters. Grumgully was one from Throne of Eldraine. He'll give a 1/1 counter to each non-human. So I guess this does not discriminate based on the type of creature you're playing. However, this is only going to give you access to green. However, this would pair very well with, like we said, Hardened Scales, Doubling Season, tons of creatures in green that get 1/1 counters, tons of creatures in green that want 1/1 counters or want other creatures to have them. So, a fairly decent option if you want to just build around a 1/1 counter-centric commander. Next, we have Siona, Captain of the Pylias. For 1, a green and a white, you get a legendary human soldier, a 2/2. Whenever she enters the battlefield, look at the top 7 cards of your library. Top 7. You may reveal an aura card from among them, put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And whenever an aura you control becomes attached to a creature you control, create a 1/1 human soldier creature token. Holy cow.
This would be so good for Vasa.
On her own, she can stand very well. She can make 1/1s whenever you're casting auras. You play a ton of cheap auras, which green and white have a just massive amount. And like you said, she'd be beneficial to add into some other enchantment-centric commander decks. Vasa, obviously, a big one. Even Karametra. So Karametra is going to let you go fetch forests or plains. She is going to let you dig through the top 7 cards when she enters the battlefield to get an aura. And you get a 1/1 human. An absolute immense amount of value with this card. I love it. I love what she can do. If you have a way to flicker her or bounce her to enter the battlefield multiple times, you can just dig through your deck.
Oh my gosh.
Potentially digging through 7 or 14 cards to get a crucial aura is immense. There's just so much you can do with this commander.
Taking Spectre Ward, have protection from all colors.
Oh my goodness. Fantastic. Next we have Taranika, a Crowan veteran. For 1 and 2 white, you get a 3/3 human soldier with vigilance. Whenever Tarika, a Crowan veteran, attacks, untap another target permanent you control. Until end of turn, that creature has base power and toughness 4/4 and gains indestructible.
That last part's good. Gains indestructible.
So, you're only going to get that ability whenever she attacks. Again, mono white, not the most powerful color. Arguably the weakest color by itself in Commander, but like I said before, plenty of ways. If we could give her indestructible, then she is bringing a friend along, making it get indestructible. And again, that creature is going to have base, 4/4, but if that creature is also getting some triggers whenever it attacks, whenever it deals combat damage, anything like that, this is what you want to focus on with this commander. I do like the ability that she can hand out indestructible. I feel like that's something worth noting.
It's too bad she doesn't have it herself, though. Like you said, kind of need a protector with
Yeah, she absolutely needs that protection since you're really only getting the effect whenever she attacks. And a 3/3 that's relatively easy to remove from the board through burn spells, chump blockers. There's tons of ways to get rid of her, but give her some kind of protection and she can really, I feel, shine in most situations.
And next we got Thrix, the Sudden Storm. It costs 3 and 2 blue. It's a legendary creature, elemental giant. It's a 4 power, 5 toughness. It's got flash. It has flying, and spells you cast with converted mana cost 5 or greater cost 1 less to cast and can't be countered.
Oh my goodness!
Oh, yeah,
I love it.
That last part.
I don't know if you're getting the Zeus vibe off of this, but I can feel it. I can feel it a little bit. He has
Lightning God.
You have just so much coming out of this. So for 5, you get a 4/5. He has flash. He has flying, and it gives all your big beefy spells. All spells, not just creature spells, not just instants or sorceries, all spells you cast with converted mana cost 5 or greater are getting cheaper and they can't be countered.
Flash this guy in at the end of your opponent's turn, and then on your turn cash Omniscience or something crazy.
Yes, absolutely.
It can't be countered.
It's cost 1 less. It can't be countered. What can they do? What are they supposed to do to this? I love it. It is only mono blue, but mono blue has tons of ways to clear out the board, to mill your opponents. Really, any strategy that relies on expensive cards that you absolutely want to hit the battlefield, he's a fantastic option. And Flash, I think, just takes him just that little bit further as far as the power level is concerned. I love it. I really like this commander.
Yeah, the flash is what makes it. It at the end of your opponent's turn, bring him in, and then you have all that mana to spend on your next turn. Yeah.
And a 4/5 body with flying for 5 mana, fantastic investment for what you get out of it.
All right, up next we got
Tymeret?
Yeah, Tymeret, chosen from death.
I love that artwork.
Yeah.
That's so cool looking.
It's it costs 2 black. It's a legendary enchantment creature, Demigod. It has 2 power and star toughness. Tymeret's toughness is equal to your devotion to black. You can pay 1 and a black, exile up to 2 target cards from graveyards. You gain 1 life for each creature card exiled this way. So it's graveyard hate. It gains toughness equal to your devotion, so it may be a good blocker.
So I like how you can exile up to 2 target cards from graveyards, not necessarily 1, and you can gain life for each creature. I feel like he has some potential. You can get him out very quickly, obviously in mono black, so you can cast him on turn 2. His toughness is going to grow, for each black permanent you're playing, and you can begin to start just wiping out opponents' graveyards, denying them either really powerful creature recursion or keep them from reusing spells that go to their graveyard. So I feel like he has a lot of potential that. Again, I don't play a lot of black, so I feel like there is a lot you can do with him that I'm just not realizing. Mm-hmm. But on the surface, I feel like you can really dig into him and make him very powerful. Plus, he's going to help you gain life whenever you get rid of his creatures. So, again, black is very good. Can use life to your advantage to perhaps pay life, draw cards, pay life, go look for a card, tutor for something, destroy a creature or permanent. So I feel like there's a lot of good you can do with this.
Yeah, Graveyard Hate is definitely something you probably want in all of your decks. You don't realize how powerful a graveyard can be until somebody grabs, let me just grab this awesome creature I had out on the field again.
The key piece of my strategy that was board wipe, I'm just going to go get it and use it against you.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it? Yeah. Next we have Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. Another Titan for 1, a green, and a blue. So another Simic. You have a 6/6 Elder Giant. Whenever it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless it escaped. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you gain 3 life and draw a card. Then you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield.
Wow.
And it escapes for 2 green and 2 blue. Exile 5 other cards from your graveyard. Now, this is a Simic commander that I can get behind.
Yeah.
You're gaining life, you're drawing a card, and getting an additional land onto the battlefield whenever it enters or attacks.
Mm-hmm.
that there's a lot going on here. Granted, so say you pay it initially for 3, so you're going to get the 3 life, draw a card, play an additional land, then you're going to sacrifice it, and then the next turn, hopefully, you'll be able to escape it, get this 6/6 body onto the battlefield, do that again. So he's helping you ramp, he is helping you draw cards, and he is gaining you life. So he's doing 3 beneficial things at once.
Yeah.
And Simic, I feel like this is something you can really build around. If you wanted to play really big creatures, getting the land out quickly is going to be beneficial. If you want to run sort of a control counter-centric build with lots of blue, obviously you want to draw those cards and get your hand full of those counters to use. And then you have a 6/6 body for potentially 4 mana. Granted, you're going to want to have stuff in your graveyard.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good card, but yeah, the exile 5 other cards from your graveyard might not be able to... You might want to protect this guy with, I don't know, counter spells.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but...
Yeah, I mean, if you can get him out and give him like a hexproof enchantment, blue has a lot of, you could stick that on him and just that way he can attack. You want him attacking every single turn, so you can just use this ability, abuse it to the fullest. It can put you in a really strong position. Gaining 3 life every time he attacks is awesome. Not to mention, again, drawing a card, playing a land. A lot of power with this card. Next up, we're going to talk about some really good non-legendary cards that caught our eye from this set. First one is a 2/4 enchantment creature, a nymph. For 2 and a green, you can cast Dryad of the Elysian Grove. He reads, you may play an additional land on each of your turns, and lands you control are every basic land type in addition to their other types.
Oh, that's so good.
So he's helping you play more lands, and he is the ultimate mana fixer.
Put that in every 5-color deck.
I agree. Every single 5-color deck needs to have this in it, just for the fact that he can mana fix so efficiently for 3 mana. Oh, he's a... What is he? He's the Chromatic Lantern, but he's also a 2/4, and he helps you play more lands. So he's like Chromatic Lantern in green, but even better.
Yep.
And then, of course, another card worth mentioning is Nyx Lotus. I kind of overlooked this at first, but it's a legendary artifact you can cast for 4. It's going to enter the battlefield tapped. And then when you tap it, choose a color. Add an amount of mana of that color equal to your devotion to that color.
Definitely great for any monocolor deck.
Absolutely. A lot of the commanders are relying on devotion. Again, gods, a lot of the demigods, so devotion's a big thing in this set. So a great way to efficiently add a huge chunk of mana, like you said, if you're in a monocolor or even in 2 colors. Since whenever you tap, you do get to choose the color of the devotion you're adding. So a fantastic way to add mana as needed.
Also, Alter the Pantheon wouldn't be a bad addition either. It ups your devotion, and that's one of its static abilities. Your devotion to each color and each combination of colors is increased by 1, but also you tap it to add 1 mana of any color. It's like you up the devotion and you can tap it for any color. It's really good card. Paired with Nyx Lotus, it makes Nyx Lotus stronger. You can get your god cards out as creatures. I don't know. I think those 2 are pretty great manas.
Yeah, just easily upping your level of devotion is nice. That means you don't have to necessarily cast another creature, another permanent of that color that has that mana symbol in its casting cost. This is just doing it for you. So like you said, you can it's going to benefit really any demigod you're running. It's going to help you get your gods turned into creatures more quickly. So a ton of potential there, and you can gain life whenever you add mana, which you're going to want to do anyway.
And speaking of adding mana, I want to talk about Nylas Intervention for a second. This card, I don't think anybody's looking to this card because it's a green card. You pay X and 2 green. It's a sorcery. You choose 1. Search your library for up to X land cards. Reveal them. Put them into your hand. Then shuffle your library. Now it has another effect. Nylas Intervention deals twice X damage to each creature with flying. You choose 1 of those. The first one was good enough.
Absolutely.
The first one, any land, not just basic lands.
Exactly.
Any land you can go search. So you can search like in mono green deck. Say for instance, you pay like 3x. You search for 3 lands. You can search for 2 artifact lands and Inventor's Fair, and now all of a sudden you have artifact tutor in mono green. And then like even like say you have all the lands you want already, you can still choose the other option. Nylas Intervention deals twice X damage to each creature with flying. That's better than Hurricane or Squall Line. That's twice as good.
Yeah.
Both those abilities together, and it's only like $1 on Card Kingdom right now.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Definitely worth looking into. One that I'm definitely going to have to consider for really every green deck. This is, I would argue, the ultimate mass land tutor just in Magic. The fact, like you said, you can get any land, not just basic lands, and you can get X amount of them. So if you just have a ton of mana to dump, which green has no problem doing that, use your Llanowar Elves, use your mana rocks, go get the lands you need, go get your Gaia's Cradles and whatever fantastic lands you want out of your deck onto the battlefield, or get them in your hand so you can then put them on the battlefield at some point. Not have to worry about land. Fantastic card. One that I feel people need to definitely keep an eye on. I agree. Sphinx Mindbreaker for 5 and 2 blue. You get a 6/6 Sphinx with flying. Now, again, that alone isn't too great, but when it enters the battlefield, each opponent puts the top 10 cards of their library into their graveyard.
Oh, man. Talk about mill.
So, mill and Commander is, I don't want to say difficult to pull off, because there are people who can do it very well. It's not a often used strategy, I'll say, but the fact that when this enters the battlefield, it's hitting each opponent, and it's not taking 2 cards or 5 cards, it's taking 10 cards. It's taking, we'll say 10% of their deck.
Wow. Pair that with the new Thassa.
Exactly. Boom, that's 10 extra cards each turn. They're losing. They're running out of cards to play. They're trying to, dig for answers to stop this combo. Blue has tons of ways to flicker creatures. If you put this into a blue-white deck, white has tons of ways to exile a creature and return it to the battlefield. And again, it's not you're trying to take out one opponent. You're destroying all your opponents at once. You effectively don't even have to attack them. This card is extremely powerful, and one I'm very excited to try and fit into some of my decks as well.
Definitely.
I'm also excited for the reprint of the Idyllic Tutor. For 2 and a white, you can search your library for an enchantment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. I do have an enchantment-focused deck with 2 Vasa, and this is just going to be a very appropriate card to put in. Right now, it's a fairly reasonable price compared to the original. I think the original is about $25. This reprint is running for about $8 on pre-order, so definitely something I'm going to want to include, and something everyone should look into if you want to run decks with lots of enchantments. Tutors in Magic are fairly expensive, so the fact that we do have a reprint coming is a very, very nice touch to the set.
Especially with this enchantment-heavy set.
Yes, definitely. With all of the gods being technically enchantments themselves, all of your demigods being enchantment creatures, tons of other enchantment creatures, it's going to be very useful. I think it's going to see a lot of play in Standard. I don't see why it wouldn't, just for the fact that it's a tutor. You can go get whatever you need out of your deck at whatever time you need it. So, a fantastic card.
I also want to talk about this black instant card called Eat to Extinction. It costs 3 and a black. Exile target creature or planeswalker. Look at the top card of your library. You may put that card into your graveyard. So you can exile target creature or planeswalker. That's really good. It's an instant. And then look at the top card of your library. And if you don't want it, put it in your graveyard. Or if it's a zombie deck.
Help you kind of filter your draws. Or in a deck that wants you to put stuff in your graveyard, helps you with that. And it does say exile. It does not say destroy, which, I don't know, black doesn't, correct me if I'm wrong, black doesn't normally have tons of cards that say just straight up exile.
Before, what was the Pharaoh set? The
Amonkhet, I think.
Amonkhet, yeah. Okay, so before Amonkhet, there really wasn't a lot of black exile cards, and until I can't even say it. Amonkhet came out, they just been releasing more and more black exile cards, and now like what was once like a white color specific thing is now like a black color specific thing.
Right, exile.
Like, it seems like they're getting a lot more than white in the exile.
A lot of support in there. Yeah. Exile is nice because it gets around indestructible. Obviously, it's not going to stop hexproof, but exile target creature or planeswalker. So, you know, if your opponent's playing a lot of planeswalkers, you can take them out. You don't even have to try and deal damage. They're just gone. So that's a nice little ability there. Another card, I really kind of caught my eye. I thought it was a little interesting, but I think there's some potential, is Nadir Kraken. For 1 and 2 blue, you get a 2/3 Kraken. Whenever you draw a card, you may pay 1. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on Nadir Kraken and create a 1/1 blue tentacle creature token. Blue draws tons of cards. And for an extra 1 mana investment, this card is getting pumped up and you're getting tokens. So I feel like it's just a card that you can extract a ton of value out of. I mean, this can itself get humongous and build your board after you draw cards, which we'll be doing. I mean, if you play blue, you're going to draw cards. That's just one of the strategies. You need to keep your hand full of counter spells. You need to keep your hand full of answers to your opponent's cards. And then the fact you can build a board state almost on accident just for playing the color anyway, I think is a really good little bit of flavor that I really haven't seen on some past cards before.
Yeah, definitely an interesting card. The next card I want to talk about is a legendary artifact equipment.
Amazing.
This is an amazing card. It's called Shadow Spear. Cost 1 to cast, and it has an ability. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has trample and lifelink. Trample and lifelink. So any deck you can have a creature, your big creature gain trample and lifelink. That in itself, it's crazy. It only costs 2 to equip, but also it has an ability. You pay 1, just 1 mana, and permanents your opponent's control lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. This card is insane.
So it denies your opponent's creatures the ultimate forms of protection. In indestructible, meaning they can't be destroyed. In hexproof, meaning they can't be targeted. This says, well, guess again.
And ideally, after you activate that ability, you have this big trample lifelinker coming their way. Watch out.
Yeah, for 1 to cast and 2 to equip, and then that ability you can play for 1. I think there's a ton of value in this.
Definitely. I'm definitely picking up a copy of this.
Yeah, a fantastic card. Not to mention there are plenty of cards in this set and in recent sets that like really powerful equipments, and this is a very efficient way to make your opponent's permanents more vulnerable. So yeah, I agree. Something to definitely keep our eyes on. Next is a sorcery that I was eyeballing. This is also going to be coming in the theme boosters. Death Bellow Warcry for 5 and 3 red mana. 8 total mana. Now, this is going to be tribal specific for Minotaurs, which there are a few Minotaur commanders, and most of them have red, so this card will fit in just perfectly. For 8, search your library for up to 4 Minotaur creature cards with different names, which this is a singleton format, so that's not going to be an issue. Put them onto the battlefield and then shuffle.
That's pretty awesome.
So let's say you get 4 3-drop Minotaurs, right? So that's already 12 mana that you are getting onto the battlefield for an investment of 8. So you're already getting ahead there. And then it says, as long as they have different names, so go get the biggest, most expensive, most powerful Minotaurs you can find, put them onto the battlefield, and then you just have this massive board state out of nowhere.
Yeah, you're only paying 2 for each Minotaur.
Exactly. So, again, Minotaurs aren't really the strongest tribe, but again, for 8 mana, just getting out 4 huge creatures that can possibly synergize very well together, put you in a very strong position. It's definitely something to keep an eye on. I don't think there's ever been a card quite like this in the history of Magic that I'm aware of. So really cool to see Wizards come up with something different like this. Again, giving support to some of these smaller tribes.
And lastly, Nick's,
the big one.
Yeah. Possibly the best card in this set.
Probably one of the best cards.
Definitely the most hype card in this set, for sure. Nyx Bloom Ancient. It costs 4 and 3 green. It's an enchantment creature elemental. It's a 5/5. It's got trample, and if you tap a permanent for mana, it produces 3 times as much of that mana instead. The first mana tripler of the game.
I agree. The first card that just straight up produces 3 times as much of that mana, and it's permanent, so creatures you tap are creating 3 times as much. Lands,
it doesn't
artifacts.
even say if you tap like a basic forest. It's any permanent that you tap for mana. This is basically like the creature version of Omniscience.
Yeah, I mean, this makes it so your mana is so efficient. Like, good luck trying to find something you can't cast when this is on the battlefield. Any deck that runs this is going to try and build around 2 strategies. It's going to be either get this out as quickly as possible and then, have it start doing what it needs to do, or find a way to tutor for it, get it in your hand, get it out as quickly as possible, and then just run the table.
If you cheese this in right at your opponent's instep, basically you win.
Again, like we said, there are the planeswalkers and creatures that can help you flash in different green cards. Flashes in an opponent's turn, and all your mana is then tripling when you untap. Absolutely insane. One card I have been really considering that would be fun to try and build with this, since it is going to be tripling mana, is Roisin Meanderer. So she is a giant shaman for 3 and either a red or a green. You get a 4/4 giant shaman. She can tap and add 4 colorless mana to your mana pool. So with this creature out, she is adding 12 colorless mana. Granted, you can only spend this mana on costs that contain X. So granted, she is a very good Hydra style commander for the fact that you can pay 4 from her tapping into the X of a Hydra. But imagine having generally whenever you pay X, they're coming in with that many 1/1 counters, a 12-drop Hydra. A 12-drop. Ridiculous. Not to mention there are so many Hydras that can double the number of counters, double power and toughness. Extremely powerful. I feel she is a commander that is kind of being overlooked in terms of how to build around Nyx Bloom Ancient. So just something I wanted to press upon before we passed over the Nyx Bloom Ancient build strategies. Again, there are a ton of other commanders that obviously tripling mana is going to be a big deal and something to look into. But, if you want to try something different, or if you're a fan of Hydra Tribal like I am, definitely a commander worth looking into with this Nyx Bloom Ancient.
Yep, for sure.
So that will do it for the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave us a comment below. Let us know how you felt about the new set. Dustin, how are you feeling about this Theros Beyond Death?
Oh man, I love this set. I love the theme. I love the cards. They got really powerful cards in the set. I even love the look of the lands. Like, have you seen those lands? The
full art lands, yes. I really like those. I agree. I'm very excited for this set. Again, I loved the old Theros, so I am just as excited for this new set. I feel like there is a lot of cards that are going to make Commander players very happy. 2020 is going to be a huge year for Commander, and I think this is a fantastic set to start out the year and really help us start adding some wonderful cards to our Commander decks. With that being said, if you liked the video, be sure to give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a comment below. Let us know what cards you are most excited for in this coming set. Thank you for your support.